Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it's great to meet you. And I'm a photographer myself. I started out in dark rooms. I've been doing it for years, so I have an affinity and love for it. So thanks for taking a minute out. And I'm going to begin our conversation with the last 4 years. Surviving a pandemic. How did you get through it and how did it change you?
Well, that is a good question. I was it was kind of a godsend for me. I had been recently diagnosed with cancer for the second time, and I needed a way to make money, a way to get through all these surgeries and still work, um, because you can't not work.
Yeah.
So my friend and I decided to start an online boutique. So some of my businesses kind of have between like headshots and branding and then boudoir. So we were trying to sell lingerie and like fun things for people to have at home. And it went pretty well until, the pandemic was over. It lasted about 2 years and then we were done with it and we could go back into the studio.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I put you in front of a bunch of third graders and one of the kids was curious what you did for a living, it's career day, and they asked you, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How would you answer that child?
Okay, for a child, I would change my wording.
Okay.
I am a portrait photographer. I work in a studio. It's usually one person at a time with my team, and we give you professional hair and makeup. You get to play dress up. It's a princess day for you. Like
Okay.
it is kind of a long day for
Yeah.
some people, depending on what we're doing. But it's a magical process, and I absolutely love it.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
Photographer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something I speak on this a little bit. But my aunt was building a studio in her attic.
Yeah.
I was 8 years old and she had me help her. And teaching me to develop pictures. So like where there was nothing, just a sheet of white paper to developing an image on it, like that was like actual magic to me at
Yeah.
that age. And I never wanted to stop. So yeah, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
I helped her a long time in her studio, and then one of my first jobs was working in a film developing, like a 1 hour film lab.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what was the first camera you had? What was the manual camera of choice?
Yeah, I had an Olympus and I wish I still had it. I gave it to my brother when I upgraded. Um, I was like 12.
Yeah.
My mom finally got me an SLR, and I had a 50 millimeter lens on it, and that was
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we experimented.
Yeah, for sure. So, did you resist the digital photography thing or did you embrace it? How did that work when you got to that point?
I embraced it.
Yeah.
I so when it was finally like officially over for film, I was kind of in my pit. So I I kind of gave up on it a little bit over. So I graduated high school. I had nowhere to live. I had to move in with my then boyfriend. And then we got married and I was pregnant. And then I had to get a job once we got divorced.
Yeah.
So like all of that momentum was kind of lost. But I remembered that dream. I remembered that purpose that I had had that was so clear to me as a kid,
Yeah.
and remembered that I was working toward that. So even if I have to work at the bank for a minute, it's okay because this is what I'm really going to do. And of course, I wasted the bank's time by watching YouTube videos on how to do Photoshop and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a lot easier to get set up as a digital photographer than it was for film photographer. So
Yeah.
I was all about the new technology because
Yeah.
it, who wants their house to smell like chemicals? You
Yeah,
know?
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about who's been kind of an inspiration as far as photography, capturing images. Who's been that for you?
I mean, Annie Leibovitz, of
Yeah.
course. She's just classic and awesome, and I love her. Otherwise, my big one is Sue Bryce. I absolutely love what she does. She's on, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's on the West
Yeah.
Coast. She's got like all of these apps and everything else. Um, Joel Grimes is another one that I really love, and Cliff Mountner. He's way up on the top of my list too, and I've worked with him before, and he's amazing.
Okay. So what about a hero? Who's been a hero for you in your life?
Oh, honestly, I'm gonna go out and say my youngest daughter. To be
Yeah.
honest, she is something else. She's resilient. She had her middle school years were all during the pandemic, and she survived it. And she's actively asking for help with counselors and everything else to kind of get through all of that trauma. I would have never known to ask for that. She's going to be 17 next month, and she is killing it. Like
Yeah.
she applied herself to a private girls' school here. So she's a day student at a boarding school, and she wants to do pop music as a career.
Cool. Cool.
And it's a little scary for us, but hey,
Yeah.
she's actually quite good. So we're like, all right, we're just going to embrace it. But she's just so brave.
Yeah.
She's an amazing young person, and I just love the heck out of her.
So what about photography? Is she into it? Does she take pictures?
I mean, no,
Okay. Okay.
no, no, that's my job. That's my dream, not theirs.
Okay. Okay, cool. So let me ask you this. If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, or let's say this. If you could go to anywhere on the planet right now and take pictures with free abandon, wherever you want to go, where would you go to capture images?
I would go back to Tuscany.
Yeah.
I've been there twice. And I did do a photo shoot there. I was there to visit a friend. And then everybody found out I was a photographer, and I did a bunch of family shoots and headshots and all kinds of stuff while I was there. But there's no ugly place in
Yeah.
Italy, like
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was out there. I've been out there a few times, and I went one time. I was stuck in the back of a water taxi on the morning of September 11th, 2001.
Oh,
And at that point in my life, I didn't have a digital camera, so I had a Pentax K1000. I had 30 rolls of film. And at
yeah.
one point, I went to a Frida Kahlo exhibit, and I'm just walking through. It's in Venice, and I'm just taking pictures. And somebody comes up in a panic. You can't take pictures here. What are you doing? And I was like, all right, sorry. And I jet off as fast as I can because I don't want them taking the roll. I'm like,
Right.
I got it. So I for some reason later that day, I grabbed a roll that happened to be that same roll that I took at the exhibit. And I thought it was a new roll, and it was that roll. And I put it in without knowing it, and I double
Mm.
exposed. So all these Frida Kahlo paintings with all of these images of the Baltic and all of these things, there was no way I could have done it on purpose. And I can't believe that they didn't get
Oh,
exposed. And it was totally awesome. So
that sounds amazing.
yeah, it was cool, but I did it before about a year before I went to Italy the first time. Same thing. I had to buy 30 rolls of film. I had to be very careful about what I took pictures of. So if I could go back and get to the old country and do it on digital, I would go crazy. Absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, film's cheap now, right?
oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, when I was younger, and we would develop wedding photographer images all the time on like medium format film and whatever, but they would charge I forgot about this until recently. They would charge a roll, like charge per roll for a wedding. So
Yeah.
like, yeah. And you have to be real careful about what you're shooting because you can't just shoot, you know.
Uh-huh. That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep. I remember those days. So the thing about being a photographer is we see the world. I mean, I'm going down the road and I'll see geese go over and I'm grabbing shots, trying to get a good shot. There's always something that I'm noticing. Half the time I'm thinking about how that can be captured. What is it to you that's so unique about the way that the photographer brain works and processes this reality?
I mean, we do see things differently. And, I'm finding with a lot of photographers, we have that thing in our brain where, like, that close your eyes and picture an apple thing, where, like, we can see it. Other people don't. And I
Right.
think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So when I'm always looking for lines, I'm always looking for intersections, what's behind their head, like with the horizon.
Uh-huh.
And when people are out there taking, so obviously they don't care that much about
Yeah.
it. Um But what's funny about that too is that the cameras on people's phones now are way more powerful than even the SLR I had, back in 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's how you use it. So it's watching for it's photography is light. Like we're all just looking for shadows and highlights. Um, and unless you don't unless you get that and understand that,
Yeah.
like otherwise your iPhone can do all the fancy filters you want. It's not going to be the same.
That is the thing about it. It's like we've almost turned everybody into somewhat of an amateur photographer having this access. Because I used to have a little digital camera I carried around all the time, and then when I got the first iPhone, just couldn't believe that it was like a miracle that fell out of a spaceship. So
Yeah.
I could do whatever I want, take pictures on it and all that. So I'm curious, what is your motivation every day to wake up, to want to take pictures, to evolve as a person? How does all of that work for you?
So depends on the day.
Okay.
And I tell people all the time, like actually taking pictures with clients is like 5% of my job.
Yeah.
Like there's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah.
I so on a typical day, if I'm not shooting, I'm meditating like twice a day. I'm doing a lot of self-work. I'm working out every day. And then I have to get in the marketing and all the stuff when I sit down at my desk. And I own my own business. So I'm free to sleep until 10 if I want to, because I do
Yeah.
my best work later. So it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but when I am with clients, I build the day around the client. And I'm very, very clear about this with the assistants or people that I hire to help me. Because a lot of times they're younger, or the girls from the salon or whatever, and they're just gonna chit chat and gossip about whoever. And I need to bring it back to the client. Like this is her day. This is what we're here, who we're here to serve. And a lot of times women, especially, so I specialize in women's
Yeah.
portraiture. Um, be, and I say that just because I'm good about getting them comfortable in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of times these women will come in and they'll be shy, feeling unphotogenic. They feel like they're too heavy. They sometimes they're even angry because it's their boss that's asking them to come in and get a headshot. It
Yeah.
wasn't done because they wanted one.
Yeah.
But by the time hair and makeup is done, and we've talked all through this whole time, right? Like we're learning a lot about each other. I love digging deep about like, okay, so what do you do now and how did you get there? And is it what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
And through that, we're like, it doesn't seem like it sometimes it is something that they're interested in, especially if it's their own business, and that is awesome. But most of the time it's something that's just paying the bills.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, but what would you be doing, if time, age, circumstance, whatever didn't matter?
Yeah.
And it's some crazy answers that we get out of that.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'll take them, I have a big mirror in my studio. So I'll take them to the mirror. How do you feel? How do you look? Should we change anything? And the girls I use are great. So usually not. And then I picked up something called a self mirror. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Uh-uh.
Um, it's a mirror in a box, and they have two sizes. They have like a 12 by 12, and they've got a full length, which I'm not ready for.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
but it is two mirrors butted up against each other at right angles, and that it irreverses a mirror effect. So what
Okay.
you're doing is seeing yourself as other people see you for the first time, and it
Oh,
is so profound. And
yeah.
people will look in this mirror and be like, oh, I do look like my dad, or oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as much as a selfie, or looking in the mirror yourself, you're not really seeing how the world sees you.
Yeah.
And it is pretty profound.
Yeah.
And I coach them through this whole thing, like, look into your eyes, give
Yeah.
yourself a happy affirmation, watch yourself smile, see that spark in your eye. And now look in the regular mirror, do the same thing. And what's happening is that your brain is processing too much. So if you're on your phone, your brain is looking at the phone, and it's
Right.
looking at the buttons, and it's looking at whatever, and meanwhile you're looking at the camera, but your brain has so much processing to do that it's not really clicking that that is you or a real image.
Yeah.
And when you show them in a mirror, it's live time. There's no distraction around this box. And it's as if you're looking at somebody different.
Yeah.
and it is unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
That's wild. That's
it's
fascinating.
cool.
Yeah. So what's been one of your favorite client stories, success stories?
I think I know my favorite story is I have a client that's about 73 years old. She had lost her husband the last couple of years, and she came in because she wanted dating site pictures because she was ready to move on.
Yeah.
And I cannot even tell you, this woman had confidence coming out of every pore. She was just happy. She was excited to be there. She went a little more risque, than I
Yeah.
thought she was going to. Um, she was amazing. And then she got a couple of dates out of that. And then she came back. She's like, I'm done with a couple of those sites. We're going to go do new sites with new pictures. I'm like, perfect. And it was the same thing. And every time I show her her pictures, she is in tears
Yeah.
because she is just, I can't believe I look like that to other people, and you
Yeah.
don't see yourself through somebody else's eyes. So
Yeah.
it's a very unique thing.
So what are you the proudest of everything that you've done and overcome and become in your life? What are you the proudest of?
I am the proudest of hanging on to what I knew my purpose was.
Yeah.
Um, because it could have easily gotten dropped. Like I had a pretty traumatic childhood, and hanging on to that was like, okay, but it's not going to last forever. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be awesome. Right.
Yeah.
And, like being homeless, finding, whatever. And again, I'm like, I'm holding on to this. It's going to be fine. Um, this is what I'm going to do. I don't know how it's going to happen. I just know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the divorce and not having food to feed my kids and working at the bank finally and all of these different things that just kind of added up. And finally, a friend at the bank had said, what would you do if time, circumstance, whatever? My answer has always been photography.
Yeah.
And he gave me this site to win a camera and a laptop, and I won. And
Wow.
I'm like, if that's not kismet, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So I started the business in 2012. A year later, I was able to quit my bank job and do it full time. Like I was making way more money than the bank was paying for me at that point.
Yeah, that's dream realized right there.
Yeah,
So and I'm gonna kind of turn the tables on you a little bit here because of this mirror that you explained. And this is a standard question, but everyone has a perception of you, family,
yeah.
friends, clients, but you are the one that leads your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a good question. So I work with a couple of coaches, and last week she gave us homework. Get the three words from three trusted people that they think about you. The one word that kept coming up with all three people was determined.
Yeah.
And I think that is truly who they see. Because
Yeah.
and stubborn. I will just make it work no matter what. Like this is what I want to be doing, and nothing else is going to fill it. And if I had to get a job and do this, then that's what I would do. But I'm
Yeah.
not giving up on this.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very determined.
Excellent. So if anyone out there wants to hire you, look at your work, reach out, anything about your world, where's the best place to go?
Absolutely. My website is elizabethsnyderphotography.com. On all socials, I'm ESPLLC.
Okay.
And I do have a freebie if anybody wants to reach out. It's a really long email. It's elizabeth@elizabethsnyderphotography.com. Didn't think about it before I made it up. But I do have a freebie. It's actually a workbook that I made to go along with my course on finding your purpose in minutes, not years.
Excellent. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your insights, for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. It was so great chatting with you.
Great chatting with you. Thank you. Have a great week.